Ole Miss's recruiting efforts have ramped up, and with the early season schedule for the Rebels, Lane Kiffin and company have a chance to really make a mark with recruiting.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. This is a unique scenario for the Ole Miss Rebels. They're doing well in recruiting. They still do well with the NIL and the transfer portal, but they're trending more towards the high school ranks. And your football schedule really makes a difference because you can get some of those key prospects on campus during the early part of any football season to celebrate that institution, in this case, Ole Miss in the Grove. And to talk about that and how it's going to impact not just local kids, but kids from all over the country, my guy, Steven Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Steven, I was looking at the Ole Miss schedule. They start with Georgia State. That should be a W. They got a second game that's a road game to start their SEC schedule, and I could have guessed it's a little more important this year than most. That would be on the road in Lexington, based on how that game went down last year in Oxford. There's zero chance Ole Miss is going to need their coaches to really get on and to be motivated for that game. If there is, that we're on a whole other plane, and then things have gone just sideways. So barring something unforeseen, I see Ole Miss at 2-0. And this is where it gets interesting, because Georgia State, Kentucky, okay, that's one thing. You've got your rival from one state over coming into town. You got the Arkansas Razorbacks on the 13th. That's always going to be a crazy good atmosphere. The Grove will be nuts. The week after, it's not that far away, and I know it's not SEC, at least currently. Tulane comes into town, and then LSU comes into town. So you got 3 games in a row with somewhat local schools that have ties to Mississippi. I think that by and large, you can get a number of kids in 26 and 27 and 28, et cetera, from Memphis, from New Orleans, from Southern Mississippi, et cetera, depending, and we'll talk about this more specifically, especially with the LSU game, depending on the kickoff times, which is huge, and we don't get those at this point, so we can only speculate. But I think LSU and these schools that come in, they're going to bring fans and a lot of attention. I think LSU in particular, if that game's late enough, you could have one of the best recruiting games for Ole Miss they've had in years. What say you?
I completely agree with that. The problem that you have in that, we were talking about this off air a little bit, is that's the weekend that Notre Dame goes to Arkansas. That's the weekend that Alabama goes to Georgia. So the 7 o'clock ESPN or ABC game that is probably going to be spoken for. So that means that Ole Miss is fighting for that 2:30 spot. And at 2:30, there's a chance you could make a coastal kid, for example, get up to Oxford. But more than likely, you're going to have a situation to where that Ole Miss LSU game might be an 11 o'clock game, which means you really have to focus with the Jarraylen McCoys, those guys, as opposed to the South Mississippi guys like Tristan Keys and Nolan Wilson. If you focus on the north side at 11 o'clock, you could make some hay. But I think that Ole Miss needs to be very targeted in what they do with inviting players to games, with looking at the schedule and where it might be. Don't waste a whole lot of energy trying to get a coast kid to come up to an Ole Miss game that's going to likely be an 11 o'clock start, because you could have a whole lot of wasted effort going into it. Focus on those narrow circles, those players 2 and 3 hours away, for a game that you think it might be 11 o'clock like the LSU game, and then that Arkansas game that might be a night game in some way on ESPN or something like that. That's where you try and get and focus the Picayune kid, the Tristan Keys, to try and get them to campus before the season, because you have to play the schedule game with where TV is going to put that game with who you're going to recruit, because you don't want to waste a lot of effort. You want to be as efficient as possible as an Ole Miss coach. If you do that, you'll be all right.
Yeah, I think it's a really unique scenario because, again, we don't get the times until 12 days before It's the Monday, a week and a half or so before. And that's hard because you want, like, if you ask Kiffin, he may not say this publicly to cause any rifts with Arkansas, but you want the kids there for the LSU game. You can say whatever you want. The Arkansas game's important, but you want them there for the LSU game. But it's just random luck, good or bad, however you want to look at it. All those other games are playing. The TV network's got to make decisions. And I'm not trying to pick on the LSU and Ole Miss game, but Bama, Georgia is probably going to be the night game for whatever network. I mean, that's
the ABC primetime game. There's no doubt there.
So what do you do? Do they put them, like, the best thing for Lane, and I know that this probably would make the people in the marketing department happy, is they're on ESPN2 at like 6:30. They would take that and they would sign up for that right now. An auto pin. I'm sure that Kiffin would say, because for what you're talking about, Tristan Keys, even kids from New Orleans could go all the way up. But if it's an 11 o'clock game, and even to some degrees, if it's a 2:30 game or whatever, it's still not easy, because if those kids got a film session from their Friday night game on Saturday morning, which most do, they can't get, there's no way in the world they get there by the end of the third quarter. Why would you even bother? So you're going to miss out on all those kids because, as we know, the state of Mississippi is massive in terms of just sheer land mass. So there's no good way to get to Oxford from down near I-10 or anything even remotely close to it. Picayune, Hattiesburg, any of that stuff. It's
one thing that's pretty cool that they did last year that they're going to do next year. About 3 weeks before the season starts, you get the windows. You don't get the time of the game, but they do let you know whether or not it's going to be a morning game, an afternoon game, or a night game potentially. You won't get the specifics, so you can strategically try and go after. It's like, okay, this Arkansas game, for instance, this is slated to be in the night window. Like Ole Miss didn't even get a night game last year, but let's just pretend that they do. Well, this is the game that we need to go all in for the Picayune kid, Nolan Wilson, the Pascagoula defensive back, Tristan Keys, those guys from South Mississippi. You really need to go all in to get them into the campus. And the 11 o'clock kickoffs, you're like, hey, we need to focus on the Jarrell and McCoy. Maybe Memphis kids, we do that. Stuff like that. If you can strategically do it, and Lane Kiffin and the recruiting staff, they are experts at doing this stuff. They're really good at it. But just for the average fan that is watching this, it's not just about, hey, let's get all the kids to come to a game. No, it's strategic in who they are going after. And a lot of it depends on when the game kicks off. So when you hear people complain about Ole Miss not having a night game during the home season, that is going to hurt them with the Pascagoula kids, with Tristan Keys, with Nolan Wilson, because they just can't get up in that short period of time to see the game.
Yeah, I think you have to adjust accordingly. And this is one of those topics that's going to come up more and more as people streamline their efforts. I think it's good that they do give them a little bigger window. You may not know, okay, is it 2:30 or it's 3:30, whatever. Within an hour or so, at least they have some advantage. And then the parents, the coaches, 7-on-7, everybody involved, plus the recruit himself, can tentatively at least schedule, okay, it's too far this weekend to go to Ole Miss. I'll go to LSU or I'll go to whatever. You got to figure that out for each kid. There are going to be some kids, I bet you, that come from Texas to visit Ole Miss this year. Well, that's going to be a night game. Maybe it's that Arkansas game, because that's an area that Lane has started to get into. Kewan Lacey and some of these guys are transferred. They're going to make some slow inroads into the Lone Star State. That stuff for that state, especially because it's so much further away. Even if it's a flight, they go into Memphis, they take the hour and 10-minute drive or whatever. You got to be able to plan all that out. It's not easy. And I think that is part of today's world that is so wild, because it used to be, we knew pretty much before June got here, okay, this game's here, this game's here. They move it around now if teams get hot. That's the one wild card. They can move it around a little bit. But if you get a 3-week window, at least you have some planning ability and you're not getting hosed on how much flights cost and everything else. When we come back, I'm going to talk about a couple of recruits with Steven that are really important, because not only are they in-state guys, but it kind of ties into this schedule and how they could visit. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and it is affordable. It's also a cost-effective way to do things. So instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork.com. Upwork.com. Connect with the top talent and grow your business today. This show is also brought to you by our friends at Gerber. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Gerber is that opportunity for you. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You could be done in under 10 minutes. And in many cases, you don't even need a health exam. It gives you peace of mind as you have an opportunity to secure the future for your children. So take all those options that you can get with Gerber and do it today. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes and meetfabric.com/locked-on-college. That's meetfabric.com/locked-on-college. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Steven, I've heard about every different rumor there is, and I've met him as well. When it goes to Tristan Keys, he was recently interviewed, and it seems like every time he's interviewed, and he's a really blunt, honest kid, really good guy, it's somebody different that I hear is either the leader, recruiting the hardest, etc. The latest one I heard, Ole Miss wasn't one of the 3 or 4 quote unquote recruiting him the hardest, and I'm not sure what that matters anyway. It's still fit in comfort. But like he mentioned, Tennessee's probably recruiting him the hardest. This schedule that we were just talking about has a chance to help Ole Miss or hurt, depending on, again, the time of the games matters. But if I were to guess, I would bet he's going to be on campus for the game against Arkansas. Because as you noted, it's the more likely to be, at very minimum, a late afternoon game and quite possibly an evening game. Here's the scenario. He's probably going to take summer OBs, may or may not make any form of a verbal commitment. And for those who don't know, Tristan Keys is, by everybody's account, a 5-star receiver, maybe the best receiver in the United States. Local kid, but he's from the coast of Mississippi, so local is subject to how one wants to interpret it. But the recruitment for him is really difficult. If they can get him on campus not once but twice unofficially, in addition to what is expected to be an OB to Ole Miss, I think it changes their recruitment. So that's why I always look at schedules for recruiting for any team. It could be Notre Dame, USC, Texas A&M, doesn't matter. When you have games matters. And sometimes there's nothing you can do about it, but you still got to work with it. And your back office staff, like you talked about, how Kiffin and that group, they figure this stuff out in advance. You can win and lose recruiting battles based on having kids come because they can get caught up in the euphoria. Okay, this is my home state school. Obviously, Kiffin throws the ball. It's not hard for him to sell to a receiver. But knowing the campus and liking it, I think is huge. Explain to somebody who hasn't been to the Grove on like a Friday to experience it, kind of get into it, and then go to the game on Saturday. Explain to them why it's so important.
Yeah, it's interesting. Most everybody that has a football program, the football game is the center of the Saturday, but that's at least a 50-50 proposition for Ole Miss. What goes on before the game is just as important as what happens inside the stadium for fans. I'm not talking about football players, but that party atmosphere, whenever you're sitting there, it's like a theme park. If you go to Disney World, you're sitting there and there's attractions you're trying to get to. The whole time you're trying to get there, there's people absolutely everywhere, like people can recognize in tailgating. But imagine that in a much more compressed area. I like to compare people. The difference between Epcot Center and Walt Disney World and Magic Kingdom is the number of sheer people going on. It might have the same number of people, but it's going to feel like more at Magic Kingdom because it's a much more compressed park. That's the same thing with the Grove as opposed to like tailgating at LSU. And that can be a major advantage for recruits coming on campus because it feels like there's a certain volume. There's much more of a party going on and all of that inside the game. Then you go to the stadium, and if you have a big atmosphere, a big night game, something with the Georgia Bulldogs or something like that, they're going to remember that, and it becomes a memorable experience from 9 o'clock in the morning all the way until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, as opposed to just the ball game. That is why the Grove is an advantage. The Sinquez Golson, the defensive back, says if you don't want to come to Ole Miss, don't visit, because it is going to be a good experience and separate themselves from the other people just for the way it's set up.
Well, I've heard that a bunch of times. And for the record, I've never been to the Grove on a Saturday to see a game. Never been inside the stadium, but I've been on campus, and I think it's a really cool place. I've been to their football camp before. I'm just curious, in your opinion, especially for a kid that's from the coast, pick whichever school you want, Pascagoula, whatever it may be. Do you think that a Grove experience has more impact because those kids probably don't hear about Ole Miss near as much? Or is it still, okay, it's the state of Mississippi, so Tristan's obviously, just use him as an example, Tristan Keys was in southern Mississippi. Do you think that it's still an important factor that he's heard about a lot growing up, or is it really that much of a disconnect between the northern part of the state and the coastline?
I think there is a little bit of a disconnect between the northern part of the state and the coastline. Basically, let's say that Ole Miss and LSU is an 11 o'clock game. That's absolutely catastrophic for the recruitment of Tristan Keys and Nolan Wilson and the safety out of Pascagoula. It just is, because you want them at that game, and there's a good chance they're not going to get there. Because of that, also because of that traffic, they don't get to experience the Grove as much as the closer prospects that come to the game. They're coming in, going to the football game, and going home because of how much traveling they have to do. Now, the flip side of that is if a kid from, let's say, outside the I-20 corridor, if you go just from Meridian to Vicksburg, anything south of that, if they're there at 11 o'clock, if they're there at a 2:30 game, they're serious. It's a real possibility that they end up there because it's hard to get to those type games. So if they put forth the effort to do it, they are serious about what's going on. So we'll see how it goes. Like I said, South Mississippi, there is a disconnect, and they don't get to experience the Grove just because of the time factor in a game week visit.
Yeah, it could really make a difference. And I'm glad you brought that up. Nolan Wilson's a kid that I met at Under Armour, New Orleans. I'd never met him before. Gregarious personality, happy-go-lucky, was great with the media. Really, really good guy. So first off, thanks to him for that. But I asked him, okay, timeline, who's leading, where you at? And it's like I punched the guy in the gut because he just looked at me flabbergasted, like he was overwhelmed with his recruitment. Just honest-endedly has no idea where he's going to school. And that's fine. But my job as a media personality is to get some kind of idea, and he really didn't. So I put him on the sheet for those of you that are watching this on YouTube on the sidebar. I put Nolan Wilson's visits and timeline. So I'm going to read the visits first, and then I'm going to break this down for you, why this is important. And I don't know how these kids come up with the visit dates and why they decide what to do, but this is what he has as of right now. He's got Texas A&M May 16th, Alabama May 30th, Auburn June 6th, Ole Miss June 13th, and then the one that's kind of the oddball of this, the University of Southern California gets the last visit, June the 20th. Now, Steven, we both know he's a Picayune kid, which those kids pretty much never go to Ole Miss. I'm sure there's been some, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah. For whatever reason, that school, they go out of state. They don't even go in state. They go out of state.
It's on the border, for those who don't know. That's down in the southwest part of the state. It's very close to the Louisiana border. But that being the case, it's a loaded program. I've seen them. They know what they're doing. The point is still the same, though. You're talking about some talented guys that come out of there every year. They got multiple P4 guys in this upcoming senior class. The Smith kid, the big offensive lineman, his brother's side of Mississippi State, like they got guys. If you can get them to campus, and this is, again, open-endedly, this is a kid, Nolan Wilson. He has no idea where he's going. If you can get him on campus for an unofficial visit, it changes things. So I want to talk about that just a little bit more and why it's important with him, plus some underclassmen recruiting right here on the Portal Podcast next. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. As a great example, manage your money with your partner is not that easy, but it's smoother than ever with this opportunity with Monarch Money, because you can track your shared accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Steven, if we get to the point with Nolan Wilson that he gets multiple visits in unofficially, in addition to the OV that he's got set in June, I will like Ole Miss's chances better. Now, again, full disclosure, we don't know what the time's going to be for the LSU game and the Arkansas. We just have some guesstimations. But a home game for a Coast kid or a Southwest Mississippi kid, I think is more important than it is for like Jay Raylan. I know Jay Raylan well. He's another kid I saw at Under Armour. I've seen him numerous times. Really good football player, but he lives give or take an hour from the Ole Miss campus. That's not that hard. In an afternoon, if he wants to go to practice, he can go and check out the Rebels. That's not the way it works for those kids down there. 4 or 5 hours flying to get to campus, that's not a good time. This is important. And to that point, whether you get Wilson or not, the 27 group, believe it or not, might be even better than 26 in the state of Mississippi. If it puts it in perspective, in my lifetime, I know Jarius Jackson signed with Notre Dame out of Tupelo in 95. And they've got 1 or 2 other kids. They offered 3 kids from Mississippi in the 27 class on Monday. That's probably as many kids as they've offered in Mississippi in about 10 years. So a bunch of these kids are in the southern part of the state again. So these visit dates matter for them too, to get, because the process is accelerated so much. There's 2 or 3 defensive linemen, arguably the best D tackle in the country is from Mississippi in the 27 class. By the way, Steve and I talk about that all the time. This state, if you can't find D linemen in Mississippi, you are blind, because they've always got them. That is one thing. It is a lock, stock, and barrel. There will be an elite D tackle in that state every year, probably a pass rusher too. But this is why those games and their schedules are so important. Ole Miss still has an advantage because it's a talent-rich state, but it's spread out. It's so gosh darn big. If they get the right times with these starting, like, again, if it's a 2:30 kickoff instead of 11, that kid from Pascagoula, he may not like it. He ain't going to be there long before kick, but he can at least get there. 11 o'clock game is zero shot. You're not getting that kid unless he's driving overnight, and then he's so tired from being in the car overnight, he doesn't want to do it anyway. They need some of these visits to work out. Ole Miss is trending, in my opinion, big time in terms of high school recruiting, replacing, at least in some bits and pieces, away from the portal, which makes your program more viable year to year. Kiffin's been great with the portal, but if you want to win big each and every year, especially securing your in-state talent, is the key to success. How much do you think Kiffin would, in a perfect world, Stephen, do you think they would go with high school recruiting in terms of the percentage of their roster? 60%, 70%? Like, where do you think they would be?
I think in the future, if the state of Mississippi continues down the road that it's been on the last couple of years.
It looks like it's going to be, by the way, from what I've seen.
If that happens, yes, I can see a very much a high school slant start to develop, and it start to look a lot like the way that Georgia and Alabama and these teams that are consistently in big talent states build their roster as far as percentages go. I think Lane Kiffin's in the transfer portal so heavily because he had to be to start off with.
I agree.
And also now because he's successful at it and he's developed a brand. So we'll see what it looks like. I do think that you could see a guy like, with the Mississippi talent, Tristan Keys and those guys come in and just for lack of a better word, a tide develop to where it kind of envelops and it becomes a snowball rolling downhill essentially.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. This is a huge year. You and I are both all in on Austin Simmons, and I know it'll be his first year starting, but he's a unique kid. If they go 9-3 or better, which I totally expect them to be, I think you're going to see Ole Miss start to consistently creep in the top 15 to high school recruiting. And with as well as they supplement it with the portal, that'll make them a viable playoff team, I would say conservatively, 2 out of 3 years. If you can get into that hump, anything's possible because like last year, Ohio State caught fire at the right time. It didn't look like they were going to, but if you get in, you never know. Like, and their quarterback just went bananas. A guy like Simmons, as accurate as he is, and I've seen him play live, so I'm biased. Great kid. Who knows? That could be the other part of this. That 27 class might be impacted by Ole Miss making it to the playoff this next fall too. I think they're going to make it. That's my prediction. And I know a lot of people made fun of me for predicting that Ole Miss will be successful even more so than Bama over the next few years. I don't like the makeup of Bama's staff enough. They've got too many West Coast guys for me. I just think that Ole Miss will do a better job of getting the right people on campus that fit the culture in the Deep South. Prove me wrong. But again, all of this, it ties back into the schedule. So any last thoughts about this, Mr. Willis?
I think the perfect storm that Ole Miss fans and everybody else needs to watch is the November 15th game where they're hosting Florida. If Florida is good, that could be a last-second thing before signing day. That could be an absolutely huge weekend in the same way that the Georgia Bulldogs was last year.
Yeah, if you win a really big SEC game, and DJ Lagway's a really good player, by the way. I loved it. Great kid. Wish him all the best. He's got some talent to work with, but I don't trust their staff a lot. That's the understatement of the millennium. So I need to see how that goes. But if you win that game and that's still the orange and blue, they carry a lot of weight. That could be another catapult for Ole Miss towards signing day in the right direction. So that's an important thing to bring up. Thank you for doing so. Steven, tell everybody where they can find your work.
We're on YouTube at Locked On Ole Miss. We put out a new podcast every day at 6 a.m. Central Time, 7 a.m. Eastern. We like to have a good time discussing Ole Miss sports. Right now, we're talking about Ole Miss's potential March Madness run, and then playing North Carolina on Friday. We have a lot of good times doing that. We're also all over social media. You can see my address at the Steven Willis and other social sites on the web. We have a good time, but it's a lot of fun. And thanks for having me, Brian.
I appreciate it, sir. You can find the Portal Podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and anywhere you get your downloads. Appreciate you stopping in. Please like and subscribe. We will see you again soon on the Portal.